very good evening to all of you. So today again, we will continue from where we left last time, the part of the Organon. We have done till aphorism 190 and we will continue from there on. So we were talking about the one-sided diseases, and in this particular part of the Organon, we are talking about the one-sided diseases which are local diseases, means which have symptoms on the skin. So we have done till aphorism 190 and we will start with aphorism 191. This is confirmed in the most unambiguous manner by experience, which shows in all cases that every powerful internal medicine immediately after its injection causes important changes in the general health of such a patient. So the experience, it tells us in that any internal medicine, when it is taken, when it is powerful enough, it always causes some important changes in the general health of a patient, and particularly in the affected external parts and also in the affected external parts. So like we were talking last time, that it was, in our mind, in doctors' minds also, the skin was something which was external. It was not something which was related to the internal part, and it was always sought out that whenever the skin has to be treated, it should be treated with some topical ointment, something which should be applied externally. So in these aphorisms, Dr. Hahnemann is telling that, even the external part, although the skin is the external part, but it is still the part of the same body and under the influence of the same vital force. So even those changes which are coming on the external part of the body, which are not coming from some kind of injuries from the outside, but which are coming from the internally, this disease, so they should always be cured or treated with the medicines which can act internally. So, and particularly in the affected external parts, which the ordinary medical school regards as quite isolated. Even today, we regard the skin as an isolated organ of the body, and we treat it in the same way, and that is the biggest mistake in treating the skin diseases, that we have never thought of that from where the disease is quite coming. Even in a so-called local disease of the most external parts of the body, and the change it produces is most salutary, being the restoration to the health of the entire body along with the disappearance of the external affection. So when a medicine is given, which is homeopathic in nature, and it is given internally, along with the curing or along with the improvement of the rest of the disease, it will also help in the disappearance of this external affection, because it is coming from the internal malady which is already going on inside the body, without the aid of any external remedy, provided the internal remedy directed towards the whole state was suitable, chosen in a homeopathic sense. So when it is chosen homeopathically, when it is a similar medicine, it is a similar medicine, along with the curing of the internal state, it will also cure the external affection which it has produced. So this is best effected when in the investigation of the case of disease along with the exact character of the local affection. So the first point when analyzing the case is understanding the exact character of the local affection. What kind or what is the character? The kind or character does not mean the pathologically, like the name of the, whether it is a psoriasis or a dermatitis or some erysipelas or some herpes. No, not the name, but what is the characteristics of that? And in this, I will add that the aggravating and ameliorating factors, the modalities, they play a big role in characterizing the local affections. What are the things which are aggravating the symptoms or ameliorating the particular symptoms of the skin? They play a big role in deciding the remedy which helps in the curing of these affections. So in this character, we have to see what kind of, what is the shape, what is the color of the eruption. We have to see whether it is an ulcer, what kind of ulcer it is, what kind of the edges are, any kind of secretions, very characteristic secretions. Okay. The itching, if there is, then exactly the character of the itching, when it starts, any kind of time modalities, any kind of any other things which basically start or basically aggravate the itching part. So all these things will characterize the local affection. So along with the exact character of the local affection, all the changes, sufferings and symptoms observable in the patient's health. So, but the remedy should not only be dependent upon those characters, but also the other sufferings or the symptoms which are observable in the patient's health. For example, if there is general disturbance in some kind of sleep, if there is some disturbance in the appetite part, if there is some disturbance in the thirst part or the thermal part, or some general disturbances which the patient is feeling and which may have been previously noticed when no medicine had been used, and these symptoms, they were also present even before this local affection. They might be in the form of some kind of accessory symptom. They were there always, but not very pronounced, so the patient didn't care about those symptoms. The patient didn't sorted any medicine for those symptoms, but they were there, are taken in conjunction to form a complete picture of the disease. So all these things we have to understand, we have to note down, and then we make a complete picture of the disease before searching among the medicines whose peculiar pathogenetic effects are known for a remedy corresponding to the totality of the symptoms, so that the selection may be truly homeopathic. So this is how we select a homeopathic remedy in these kind of cases. The first is the character of the local affection. We have to characterize it. We have to, we have already done this, I think in Thailand also, in India also, and in Brazil also. I have taken this lecture of how to characterize the symptoms, the characterizing of the symptoms. So once we have characterized the symptoms and we have taken other sufferings or the symptoms which are observable in the patient's health, we can make a complete picture of the disease, and we have to find a remedy which basically corresponds this totality of the symptoms. So by means of this medicine employed only internally, so it has to be employed only internally, and if the disease be but of recent origin, often by the very first dose of it, the general morbid state of the body is removed along with the local affection. So when you give the medicine in this way, when you select the medicine in this way and you give it internally, so the internal affection will be gone along with the local affection which was produced as a result of that internal morbid state, internal disease state. And the latter is cured at the same time as the former, and the both things will be cured at the same time, proving that the local affection depended solely on a disease of the rest of the body. So that is also kind of evidence which we see that this whole disease, the external disease which was uh, in appearance external to us, but it was actually depending on the disease which was going inside, proving that the local affection depended solely on a disease of the rest of the body and should only be regarded as an inseparable part of the whole, as one of the most considerable and striking symptoms of the whole disease. So it was in these kind of cases, they are the striking symptoms of the whole disease. So they should never be ignored when they're even, for example, if patient is suffering from some kind of symptoms and they have some skin diseases which are coming again and again, for example some boils which are coming again and again, the characteristic of those boils or of those eruptions should be given importance, because they are showing you something about the internal disease which is going on. They are a part of that disease, so they should never be ignored. Their characteristics should never be ignored. Their modalities, their aggravating factors, they should never be ignored. It is not useful either in acute local diseases of recent origin or in local affections that have already been a long time, to rub in or apply externally to the spot an external remedy, even though it be the specific, and when used internally, salutary by the reason of its homeopathicity, even although it should be at the same time administered internally. So Dr. Hahnemann is saying that this is not advisable and not useful also, that when there is some either an acute local disease or a chronic one which is going from a long time, to apply any external remedy although you find it homeopathic. For example, you have chosen sulfur as a homeopathic remedy. So while giving internally and you start applying it externally, it is not advisable and it is not reasonable also. Why? He is going to tell us about that thing. Because this have been even nowadays many homeopaths they suggest that it is better to apply the remedy, the homeopathic remedy, and there have been some ointments in the name of homeopathy which have been made and used to apply on the lesions, but that is not advisable. And why it is not advisable, here is the reason for that. For the acute topical affections, for example, inflammations of individual parts, erysipelas, etc., which have not been caused by external injury of proportionate violence but by dynamic or internal causes, yield mostly surely to internal remedies homeopathic. So he's saying that acute some local diseases coming, some acute rashes are coming or erysipelas are coming. So once you give an internal remedy, they yield very easily when the medicine is homeopathic, when the medicine is similar, adapted to the perceptible state of the health present in the exterior and interior, selected from the general store of proved medicines and generally without any other aid. So you don't need any other aid, not to apply anything, not to give anything. Some disease of acute character, you give a correct remedy, a homeopathic remedy, and it just goes away very easily. But if these diseases do not yield to them completely, and if there still remains in the affected spot and in the whole state, notwithstanding good regimen, a relic of disease which the vital force is not competent to restore to the normal state, then the acute disease was, as not frequently happens, the product of sora, which had hitherto remained latent in the interior, but has now burst forth and is on the point of developing into a palpable chronic disease. So he's telling about the regarding the acute local disease, that if a local acute local disease, when you give the medicine and it does not yield immediately, then it is due to the product of the sora. Okay, there has been some sora, internal latent sora, which has been going on, and it might basically develop into a kind of chronic disease in the coming time. So it is an indication when some acute local disease is not going away easily, that it is basically a product of the sora, and a soric remedy, an anti-soric remedy should be selected, a constitutional simillimum should be selected and given accordingly. So in order to effect a radical cure in such cases, okay, in the chronic cases, in order to effect a radical cure, which are by no means rare, after the acute state has pretty well subsided, an appropriate anti-soric treatment, as is taught in my work on chronic diseases, must be then directed against the symptom that still remain and the morbid state of health to which the patient was previously subject. So he's saying that after this acute stage has gone, after those acute eruptions have gone, an anti-soric treatment should be given, and it is everywhere. Dr. Hahnemann will basically advise us to do that, even in the coming cases where the mental diseases which are coming acutely, there also he will say, or other acutes which have happened because of the sporadic diseases or the intermittent fevers, he will always advise that after that acute stage has gone, give an anti-soric remedy, because this acute stage was product of the latent sora. So don't just let it be at that time. In chronic local maladies that are not obviously venereal, the anti-soric internal treatment is moreover alone requisite. So when the local maladies or the local diseases or the skin diseases, they are of not venereal character, of the they are not coming from the gonorrhea or the chancre, then the only antisoric treatment or only a constitutional remedy is what is needed. So it might indeed seem as though the cure of the such diseases would be hastened by employing the medicine substance which is known to be truly homeopathic to the totality of the symptoms, not only internally but also externally, because the action of a medicine applied to the seat of the local affection might affect a more rapid change in it. When I was in college, so because my father was a homeopath, so I had listened to his lectures, and but I was very new to everything, which was happening around. So one day, one of our teachers, sorry. So one day, one of our teachers, he was talking about the medicine, some of his cases, that how he has applied some remedy on the skin part and it has gone better. I knew that this was a wrong thing. I asked that the teacher whether it is the right thing to do or not. He said that you can see that practically it's a very good thing. And he showed me the aphorism 196. This aphorism, he told us to read it. And we read it, and I was shocked because, in my understanding, it was, that this should not be done, because I have heard my father and saying that, you should not apply it locally. But when I read this, that it might indeed seem as though the cure of such diseases would be hastened. So he said that, like Dr. Hahnemann is saying, that the cure is hastened when you apply the remedy outside and when you give the same remedy internally. So when you read at this aphorism, it seems, that it comes to the mind, okay, that Dr. Hahnemann is basically advocating the use of a remedy which is homeopathic, that it should be used internally and externally also, so that the cure can be hastened. It can be, and the rapid change can be become. But the main part here is this word, seem. If you don't give importance to this word, the whole meaning will change. It might indeed seem. It might seem to us, it might, in our imagination, this thought would come that when you give a true homeopathic remedy, which is completely similar to all the symptoms, when you give it internally and you give it externally, then it will cure in a more rapid way. And in some cases, it does also. Okay, it does also, but I will go to that point, that why, what is that, what happens. So when I read about it, when I talked about it, so my father said that, okay, you have read the 196, now go read 197 and never do this mistake again. So in 197, this treatment, however, is quite inadmissible. This should not be done, because it seems to you, but the experience tells quite the otherwise. This treatment, however, is quite inadmissible, not only for the local symptom arising from the miasm of Sora, but also and especially for those originating in the miasm of syphilis or psychosis, for the simultaneous local application along with the internal employment of the remedy in diseases whose chief symptom is a constant local affection, has this great disadvantage that by such a topical application, this chief symptom, local affection, will usually be annihilated sooner than the internal disease. So why it is not advisable, either in any kind of miasm, whether it is of syphilis, sora or psychosis, any symptoms, local symptoms which are coming up, and you have given the internal medicines, but then this thought comes to the mind that why not apply this externally also? Because in such cases there is a great disadvantage. The disadvantage is that this external symptom, the local affection, what happens is it gets annihilated, it gets diminished sooner than the internal disease. So when the local affection is getting better and the internal affection is getting better, what should be done is, as we have read in the aphorism 190, 3, that both will be cured at the same time. The morbid state of the body is removed along with the local affection, and the latter is cured at the same time as the former. The local affection is cured at the same time when the morbid state is cured, internal morbid state is cured. So what is happening here is that the external affection is basically getting better sooner than the internal disease, and we shall now be deceived by the semblance of a perfect cure. We will be deceived by this semblance, by this outward appearance of a perfect cure. The perfect cure no, has not happened because the internal disease has gone gain to the latent sura stage, and it might come out in the some other form because it has not got cured, or at least it will be difficult and in some cases impossible to determine from the premature disappearance of the local symptom if the general disease is destroyed by the simultaneous employment of the internal medicine, and we will not be sure, and it cannot be determined whether the internal malady has disappeared or not, and the most of the times it has gone to the latent sora stage again. Whenever you will apply externally, the symptom is gone, it has gone to the internal sora, it has gone to the latent sora, and it will come up with some other more dangerous symptoms which will be more violent than the skin problem which has just been treated. So that is why it should never be done. It is inadmissible. The mere topical employment of medicines that are powerful for cure when given internally to the local symptoms of chronic miasmatic diseases is for the same reason quite inadmissible. So similarly, applying some other medicines for the mere topical employment, for example, you're giving some medicine internally and applying some allopathic medicine or some other things in the topical part, in the external part, that is also quite inadmissible for the same reason. For if the local affection of the chronic disease be only removed locally and in a one-sided manner, the internal treatment indispensable for the complete restoration of the health remains in dubious obscurity. If the outer symptoms go away, we will never be able to cure the patient or restore the health in him completely. The chief symptom, the local affection, is gone. Because in these cases, these one-sided skin diseases, cases of the local diseases, the skin symptom, the local symptom, the symptom of the external part of the body is the chief symptom. And when it is gone, what are we going to prescribe upon? And there remain only the other less distinguishable symptoms which are less constant and less persistent than the local affection and frequently not sufficiently peculiar and too slightly characteristic to display after that a picture of the disease and a clear peculiar outline. So we are left with very less persistent and less peculiar symptoms on which we cannot base our medicines, and then we have to wait for the symptoms to come up again in some other form. Until then we have to wait. Our hands are tied, we cannot give any medicine which can cure the patient, which can recover the patient back to the health. Okay. So we will do till 198 and we will start from 199 in the next lecture. So these two things which we have to understand is that the thing is we have to understand that this local symptoms are basically coming from the internal malady, from the internal disease, and they are not something which are coming in the isolated parts, or the skin is the isolated part and it can be treated with. That is why the topical applications, or that is why this external applications on the skin diseases, they should be avoided, because once it has gone and once we are left, because the latent sora is a stage where the disease can go anyway. That is a very dangerous stage. We will talk about latent sora someday, because in the latent sora, when the vital force is not expressing the disease in the form of physical symptoms, it is not that disease is gone or it is not developing. It is developing in the silent organ of the mind. You will see that in that latent sora part, the behaviors, the characteristics of the moods, they will start developing, they will start changing. So that will become more dangerous, because when it will be expressed, then it will be expressed in a more violent way as compared to the primary symptom of the skin. So we have to understand this thing, that this skin symptoms, they are basically a part of the internal dyscrasia the part of the internal miasm which is already going on, and they should not be applied with any kind of topical medicine, either homeopathic or allopathic or of any other character. Because if this thing gets better and the internal disease is not getting better, then the secondary symptoms of the sora or the tertiary symptoms of the sora, they will start appearing after uh, some time, and it will take more time to cure the disease, to bring the patient back to health as it could have been done in the earlier stage. So this is a very important thing to note. And the third part is that never read an aphorism, isolatedly. Because if you read 196 isolatedly, it might appear to us that okay, it is okay. And many doctors have, like I told you, one of my teachers in the college also, he might have read it in that way, and or someone has might have told him also in that way. Because many times when we are listening to some doctors or some teachers, then in our mind we take it for surety. So the thing is your own experience and what you are reading. So what, but when you read it with in connection with 197, in connection with 195, then the whole meaning change. So we will continue with aphorism 199 in our next meeting. And till then, just go through these aphorisms, try to understand what Dr. Hahnemann is trying to tell us, and how we have to direct our treatment in such cases. And once you start understanding, you can do one thing, that go in this 1 week, just go through the medicines and see the skin symptoms, see what kind of symptoms the skin on the skin they can be produced, and you will try, and you will start understanding the characteristics, the things which are common, which happens in the skin diseases, and which are uncommon. So those uncommon characteristics, whenever you find them in such cases, they will help you a lot in finding the remedy, in understanding the process which is going on, and in finding the right remedy which is homeopathic to that particular state and to the internal disease which is already going on. And when you give it that way, you will be amazed to see that how the remedy, when given, the disease just vanishes, never to appear again. Okay. So with that, I will take your leave. Thank you, and a very good night to all of you.